We are on the air. Welcome to another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy. And this time we are not going to talk about a particular episode. We have been dying to talk about the Star Trek 50th anniversary in general. So this is our 50th anniversary episode. I am joined by my esteemed colleague, the Doctor, who started this venture with me. So it's very appropriate that we're together here today. Hello, Doctor.
Yeah, hello, good evening. It is evening in both our locations, isn't it? Well,
Well,
no, there's still light in your.
yeah, we've got quite a little bit of daylight left here at Starfleet headquarters. Yeah, it is evening for you over at. What do we establish you're at again? You're just on the
We're
TARDIS. You're like
I'm
you're in
just
the
in the
Milky Way Mall
TARDIS.
shop. Yeah.
Yeah, we're in the Milky Way Malt Shop. That's where we're at.
So, which, by the way, the mall shop that your background is exactly what I envision. Some of the rooms in the mall shop
Thank
looking
you. I do my best.
You'll notice I'm recording from a new location in my quarters. You can see my
Yeah,
kitchen area here.
the flags.
The flags, yeah. Some countries that I've admired or been to back there.
And is that the Holy
Very good.
Stereo back there? The one with
Oh yeah, it's a pretty nice little system there that was generously gifted to me many years ago, and I
it's the
enjoy it.
Holy Stereo. Yes, I remember how that sounds.
So we just got earlier today. We recorded our really epic, soon to be launched discussion about Star Trek 3. I apologize for those of you who can't sit through 10 minutes of Starfleet Boy because it's a 2 hour episode.
Extravaganza.
Extravaganza. But for those of you who do enjoy the show, I think it's a lovely episode. And we've been talking here and there about Star Trek, and this is the 50th anniversary year, and we're very excited about the fact that Star Trek is 50, and there's a lot of fun things going on. But also, for in some ways, it's a little underwhelming, and I think we'll definitely talk about those points. But I guess we should start out by telling maybe basically, Doctor, I don't think we've ever really gone into great detail about this on the show, and if we have, I apologize. I have a bad memory. It's well known. But how did you come to start? What's your Star Trek story, I should say?
Oh, well, my dad is a huge Star Trek fan. He consumes everything of Star Trek, and he's the one that got me started watching the original show. I think the show, just like with you, we both watched it here in Miami locally on Channel 6, which was at that time was independent station, and they would do Labor Day marathons. Do you remember those?
I do remember the Labor Day marathons. Those were so great.
Those were great. And then you somehow, I guess you would call, I don't know, but somehow they would compile fan favorites, which were the favorites of the fans, and then they would show those in the marathon. And I used to have VHS tapes from that, and they would they were not in order. They were in order of favorites of the fans. Obviously, the Tribbles was number one, and you had great episodes like the Mirror Universe one, and of course I remember when Star Trek 2 was coming out. There was a lot of talk about Space Seed. And I remember watching Space Seed for the first time when Star Trek 2 was in theaters. Now, I didn't see Star Trek 2 in the theater. I saw Star Trek 3 in the theater. That was my first Star Trek movie. And but yeah, basically my dad is a huge Star Trek fan and still is to this day. And we've gone to see Star Trek movie. We both saw the new one together. I guess the 50th anniversary movie.
Star Trek Beyond.
Well, more on that later.
That's really great. I had obviously a similar experience growing up. I saw the same the same television station that aired Star Trek, and watch it. And I think what's the first episode that you can remember, like the oldest episode you can remember liking or watching or thinking about?
The the Doomsday Machine one, where Decker's father appears. His ship is practically destroyed by it, and I just have this vivid memory of the Enterprise going up against this massive, gigantic. It's not even a creature. It's just this. I don't know. It looks like it's made out of stone. It's just bizarre, and it eats starships. I mean, how epic is that?
Wasn't it a planet eater? I thought
It was a planet eater.
Yeah, it ate planets.
Starships.
Yeah. It's so cool.
And it's just fantastic to me.
And that was the Starship Defiant, wasn't it? Wasn't this ship called the Defiant?
I wish I could remember. I don't know.
I
know
Decker. Remember, yeah.
William Decker is and then of course I remember the finale where he flies that shuttlecraft into the thing, and the music in that episode is phenomenal. That and it's just like relentless, and it drives you crazy. Yeah. Let me tell you, the music, of the original series, you can't talk enough about how great the music was on that show.
It's really true. I remember I'm not sure if this is the first one I ever saw, but the first episode I can remember because of something my father did that was really funny is the episode with Ron Howard, with Clint Howard, with Ron Howard's brother, where they are approaching, I guess, another gigantic ship of some kind, or they're chasing it. I can't remember. But then there's that kind of that alien creature keeps appearing, with the really long face and kind of like that,
Oh yeah.
And then they find out it's this little kid,
right.
Kind of, actually, like, it's a very
I didn't realize that was Ron Howard's brother.
Pay no attention to the man behind the mask. Yeah, it's Clint Howard. So yeah, that's a really cool connection with him in there. And remember that because my father can do that face really well. I wish I could show you. I think there's a photograph or something like that.
Oh, it's hilarious.
He used to do that face really well. So it's one of the first episodes I remember watching. Let's talk about Star Trek and the different anniversaries that we've experienced. So the first anniversary I can remember is the 25th anniversary. And what's that? What are you showing us?
This is the official 25th anniversary, I guess, booklet, commemorative booklet for the 25th anniversary right here.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And that was such a great and exciting time. I remember there were so many things going on. Didn't the Star Trek Experience come out in Las Vegas around that time, if I recall? And there's just like a lot going on. What's going on here? Oh, this will tell you.
This is the tour.
Yeah.
So this booklet tells you that the tour was going on. Next Generation was happening. The show was just coming out on VHS, the episodes of the original series, and it was a great time for Star Trek. It really was. And of course, this is the one with Star Trek 6 came out on the 25th anniversary, did it not?
Are you sure? I think it might have been Star Trek 5 might have been the 25th.
Was it?
I'm gonna check. We have to check. So this is the part of the show where we're gonna have to go to the internet because we're both old men and we have really bad memories. Unless your book tells you anniversary here of Star Trek. because we can't do math, right? We're terrible. We're
We're
terrible at the
terrible at
math.
math.
At the mathematics here.
I'm pretty
Uh,
sure it was Star Trek 6.
so it was 1992, and if I'm
Right.
not mistaken, let's take a look at what year Star Trek. Let's see here. Star Trek 6.
By the way, I have here the other. This is a
Oh,
special publication. You
I
have
have that
this.
too. Yeah.
Yes. Which was put up by Starlog, which is an excellent guide. And as I go through this, I see that Star Trek 5 had already come out in 1989. So Star Trek 6 was the 25th
90, yeah, in 91. You're absolutely right. Oh, so I didn't realize that the crew basically signed off for the 25th anniversary and handed the reins over to the next generation.
That
basically.
was the impetus for Star Trek 6, because if you recall, Star Trek 5 was such a disappointment. And the heads of the studio, and this is fresh in my mind because I just read the memoir by Nicholas Meyer, View from the Bridge, which I recommend to everybody. It's a fantastic book, especially if you're a Star Trek fan. But Nicholas Meyer is just an amazing individual. I mean, it's just fantastic to read his. He's very literate and he's very witty. But anyways, the studio was committed to sending out the crew on a high note. I mean, Star Trek was a prestige franchise for them, and
still is a prestige franchise, I think.
we'll debate that now. But they wanted to send out the crew on one final, good movie, above, excellent hit film. And that's why Star Trek 6, the date was locked. They had to meet that date. And Nicholas Meyer actually argued for a certain budget, and they were like, no, you can't have it. And he says, if you want that date, you got to give me that budget. And they did it fast, but it was tough. He says it was a tough shoot to match the anniversary. I mean, that date was dictated by the anniversary. I think it came out in November. It was a late film.
You're right. I do remember it was around the holidays, and
right.
Yeah, I think that the 25th anniversary, and maybe it has something to do with the fact that, in 91 I was a teenager. It was just really exciting. The landscape around us was pretty different too. You didn't have a lot of I feel like the main sources that we got our information from, and especially about Star Trek, were kind of like, there were certain channels. Like you definitely saw Entertainment Tonight did a lot of specials, I guess because it was a Paramount show, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Entertainment Tonight did a lot of coverage on Star Trek and Star Trek 25th anniversary, and of course you saw things on Good Morning America and things like that. And the internet wasn't really a thing.
But yet you felt like you were a part of something. I mean, we had Star Trek 6, which was clearly celebrating Star Trek, and with one last hurrah for the original crew. There was sort of a tip off, an acknowledgement of what was coming with Next Generation. We had Worf, Michael Dorn playing Worf's grandfather. You had Kirk with that his lines of dialogue saying, what is it, to the future crews, whatever, of the Enterprise. But also remember, there was this special. There was the 25th anniversary special, which was 2 hours on television. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do remember that. I recorded that. I remember recording it.
We both recorded it. It was later sold as a VHS on its own, and it had beautiful artwork. I don't know if you remember the cover for that anniversary special, but it was this beautiful cover.
What was it? Do you have it anywhere?
Oh, I'd have to look for it. I don't have it here with me, but suffice to say, we had products like this, which you just said you had. I still have it. There seemed like every media outlet, print, television, and certainly film, there was a concerted, there was a concentrated effort to celebrate and to mark the anniversary of Star Trek, to give fans something, to reward them for having been fans for so long.
Right.
There was I mean, it felt, you felt like this was cool. You were part of a celebration, like Doctor Who's recent 50th, which they did this various, and obviously in today's world, with today's media, they did the same thing. It was a blitz. It was a media blitz. What was the media blitz for the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, I ask you, sir?
Well, so for the 50th anniversary, what I've been seeing and noticing sort of is that there's a lot of commercial like stuff. Like, for example, it's not like, you're right. It's not like, there's not like a celebration. There's no is there a documentary? There's a cool Spock documentary that just came out, like
by his son, but
about Leonard
that's about
Nimoy.
his father. That's,
right, which is really sweet, and I think it's wonderful, and I think it's part of the 50th anniversary. But is there a film about Star Trek 50 years? Do you know of one? Because maybe I'm missing something.
I mean, obviously we had Star Trek Beyond
come
out,
but like a documentary or something like that. I haven't seen anything like that.
None that I'm aware of.
I know that there's these huge sort of, Comic-Con, and like there was the Star Trek Las Vegas convention, and then another one in New York that was celebrating the 50th. But again, I don't see any, like, we got that 25th anniversary special that came out on TV, and in fact, I remember there was something even on the 30th anniversary that was like cool that there was released on TV.
They did. I remember that.
Yeah,
at
it was
that time,
and it included Voyager, I think. Like,
it
by
included
that time.
Voyager, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was on UPN. At that point, UPN was sort of taking charge of, Star Trek. Everything was sort of being channeled through UPN. And again, there was a concentrated effort to celebrate Star Trek. There was a similar publication by Starlog.
Maybe this feeling that you're feeling, and and I definitely feel I echo it. On the one hand, I don't know if we're good at being barometers for the state of Star Trek, because we're like we're steeped in Star Trek. We're very, very adamant fans, if you will. Like, Star Trek's just like a part of my daily life, just like, I'm like, if I have a minute or if I have an hour, and it's between watching reality television or Star Trek, I'm going to choose Star Trek every time. In fact, if it's between watching just about anything and Star Trek, I'm going to choose Star Trek every time. And I don't have a lot of television time in my schedule, so I definitely go back to Star Trek a lot. But here in Seattle, where I live, the EMP Museum is doing a celebration of Star Trek, and it's pretty cool. And I think, now that I come to think of it, like, all these things are definitely sanctioned by Paramount or CBS, and it's part of a big thing. And maybe just what I was getting at earlier is maybe the landscape's changed. Like, there's not really a network out there that can kind of, like, Paramount, there's not really a central place for Star Trek to kind of be showcased anymore. Star Trek's definitely not on television, which is also different from the 25th anniversary and the 30th anniversary. I feel like having a television show helps a lot with kind of like bringing people together, because you can promote things you're doing for the anniversary on, during the television show. In fact, if I recall correctly, most of how I knew what was going on for the 25th and the 30th was through commercials about promotion, promotional advertisements about it during the shows.
Well, I mean, certainly it's a good point. For the 25th, obviously you had Next Generation had the episode with Spock,
the unification, right?
The unification episode, which I'll show right here. So that obviously celebrated the 25th anniversary on television in addition to the special. And then later on, you correctly pointed out for the 30th, the shows that were on the air. Deep Space Nine did their Tribbles episode, which is fantastic. And then Voyager had an episode with Sulu in command of the Enterprise.
Oh, that's right.
Turns out Tuvok was on board that ship.
The Enterprise B. The Enterprise B?
No, the Excelsior.
Okay. I thought
so. But you know what you said is I hear you, but there's one I'm gonna photon torpedo that theory, which is, you know, we just had the Doctor Who 50th anniversary, and I'm sorry, but I felt like I was, you know, taken by the BBC, and for a year it was just like a palooza for the whole year in terms of, you know, you had the Day of the Doctor. I mean, it was literally named Day of the Doctor, that the day of the premiere of the episode, and then they had the special Day of the Doctor. You had ancillary productions on audio. Doctor Who's huge on audio. They had the audio reuniting all the remaining Doctors that weren't in the 50th anniversary on television. You had books celebrating the 50th anniversary. You had toys celebrating the 50th anniversary. You had a Fathom Events presentation of the anniversary special in cinemas. You know, why couldn't we have had something for Star Trek in theaters through Fathom Events? I remember when they were showing when they were promoting the Blu-rays, the first round of Blu-rays for Next Generation, Best of Both Worlds was shown theatrically. My brother and I went to it. They had the first episode of Next Generation, Encounter in Farpoint, theatrically. I mean, they could certainly have put together something theatrically to celebrate, to mark the actual day, the actual week that it happened. They could have, you know what they could have done? Why couldn't they have done like when Warner Brothers was celebrating their 25th anniversary? You'll remember, what did they do? They had a road show of their best films. Remember, you and I went to the 80s one at Coco Walk, and they had Batman. They had this. Why couldn't they have had a traveling road show of the Star Trek films? You could have had a week of Star Trek films booked in movie theaters. You know, on Monday it would have been Star Trek 1 and 2, and Tuesday, you know, 3 and 4, et cetera, et cetera. And there, so much could have been done. So I think you, I argue 100% against your.
Well, I think you actually validated my argument, because what I was saying is that for the 30th and the 25th, we had a television show as the central focal point of driving the excitement and driving all the, you know, sort of celebration around Star Trek. And you pointed out, you know, on the 30th we had the Voyager and the Deep Space Nine, you know, tie-ins, and on the 25th we had the, you know, we had unification on Next Gen. But where I'm going to agree with you is that Star Trek Beyond did not deliver a 50th anniversary experience. How could it? It's a movie. How's it going to, like, you know, although they could have brought William Shatner into the movie.
Well, that's part of it, is the fact that, okay, it was meant to celebrate the 50th anniversary, but we don't know we haven't lived with these people, these actors as these characters, for as long as we've lived with any of the other casts. So it doesn't really feel like a 50th anniversary with them. They're the rookies. And there was really not much of an attempt made to somehow, you know, and that
brings me to this kind of like disappointing realization about the people who are behind Star Trek, and I respect everyone who has involvement, especially firsthand involvement in Star Trek, because that's like, a dream job perhaps, or a dream, career is to be someone spearheading Star Trek. But, one looks at the calendar and doesn't one see, oh, like in a couple of years, the 50th anniversary is coming up. Why couldn't they have started the production of Star Trek Discovery a year ago, perhaps? And then this
Correct.
50th anniversary year could have been the launch of Star Trek Discovery.
Correct.
And I don't think the CBS platform, the online platform, I think it's running now. It's not like Star Trek was going to launch it, right? Like,
right. No, it's already running.
so it's running. The platform's running already, so that's not an excuse. So I'll say that, like, there's a big opportunity to launch Star Trek Discovery a lot sooner. They could have started these teasers last year, and even if it was pushed back, as by the way, my prediction was correct. I couldn't understand how a show was going to get produced in like less than 5 months or 4 months, a world-class Star Trek show. And lo and behold, the recent announcement is that Star Trek Discovery will not air in January, but in
May, right?
In May, yeah, which is exciting because, well, my birthday's in May, so
Oh, there we go. Yeah,
yeah. So I mean,
true.
like, it's a nice little thank you, CBS, for the nice little birthday present.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, how wonderful would it have been if at this we have all this excitement, despite the sort of like kind of not very the underwhelming Star Trek 50th so far for some of us. There's still a lot of excitement around the 50th. People are sharing their personal stories. There's a lot of cool exhibits that are touring or that are opening. There's like these conventions. Like I said, I do think there is a lot of great, exciting things
There is,
out there,
but it's not like the 25th or the 30th. It doesn't feel.
Yeah, and my argument is that feeling, that lack of feeling you're sensing, is because there's not a central point for us. The
There's
show,
no central point,
yeah,
right?
the show's not here yet, and it would have been wonderful if Discovery was launched this year, like if it had been January or May of this year. And I think that was definitely a missed opportunity. And I'm not sure, obviously it's obviously that's something that oh well, we're still going to get Star Trek. I'm really excited. Star Trek's coming back to TV, and just because it wasn't on the 50th anniversary, I'm not going to be like, crying about it and like holding it against the show. But it would have been wonderful if it had been something that was already on the air at this time. And think of all the opportunities. Apparently the show is set 10 years before Kirk and Spock. And could you imagine like the really cool kind of interesting cameos they could have weaved in and out? To me, if I had to speculate, I would say that Star Trek Discovery was like a last minute response to all the attention that Star Trek is getting. And actually, what I would say is that the fan, once again, with Star Trek, as has happened before, fans are producing much more compelling content than the studios are. I've not had a lot of time, as I said, to watch TV, but I've caught a few minutes here and there of Star Trek Continues, and it's kind of cool. It's like, have you watched Star Trek Continues at all?
I watched the column. That's the one with there's an episode where Sulu's on it, right?
No. Star Trek Continues is basically continuing the original series with like the only person that I can think
George
of.
Takei appears in one of them, doesn't he?
Maybe he might, but who? It's the Kirk and everyone else is played by
It's
different
the one
actors.
they filmed in Florida.
Is that where it's filmed? It's exciting. I have
guy he built all these sets, and they're in
I have no
North
idea
Florida
about it, but it's like really well done. And then I'm going to bring up another little argument, and I don't know again if the folks behind Star Trek Discovery are listening to our show, but or that they even care what our opinions are. I doubt they do. But another thing that worries me just from the little teaser of Star Trek Discovery is that, to me, it just doesn't fit with the timeline that they're proposing. Like there, nothing about the look of it or the feel of it or anything looks like 10 years before Kirk and Spock to
Well,
me.
we don't know anything yet.
We don't know anything, but the ship is important. I think the ship design is an important.
But didn't they say that even that ship is not finalized?
Well, I hope that's the case.
I'm open-minded about
You're
that.
holding out, yeah.
Because, I mean, let me tell you, one of the things that I know people complain about with Enterprise was, oh, the things look too high-tech on Enterprise.
I'm one of those people.
And the reality is that that's just not, it's not going to happen.
Well,
we're not going to have something lower tech than the original show. It's just not gonna. It's not feasible. It's not gonna happen.
So this Star Trek. So let me just tell you, the Star Trek Continues that's on, right? Everything is so true to the original series.
It is.
But it looks better, and it's just, trust. I think people need to trust that, like, better filming techniques, obviously better equipment, things like that. And there's wiggle room to update things. Like you can have animations. I think that's okay. Like I think the intention of the original series is if they could, the screens would be animated, the background screens like above Spock and Uhura and stuff like that. I think they would have animations, and you can have like touch sensitive surfaces. I think that's okay. Like it doesn't have to be buttons, and things like that.
They didn't have any. No, it's buttons and switches. What are you talking about? There was nothing. There was nothing. The entire run of the original show.
Well, no, but I think
touch sensitive. Nothing.
I think you can have it because the Enterprise is pretty old. Even by the time hasn't she been around for like
not that long? No, there's no way. It would look hokey. It's like, okay, let me use an example. Okay, another example. Okay, so the Star Wars movie that's coming out, Rogue One.
Yeah.
Are you gonna tell me that you're not gonna find stuff in that movie that's gonna look more high tech than A New Hope? Of course you are.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Of course you are. Look at those Death Troopers that they have. They look like 20 times better than the Stormtroopers. Where were those Death Troopers during Empire and Return of the Jedi? It's just a reality we have to accept. We have to swallow it. And it's the same thing with Star Trek. And I got over that quick. Maybe it's because of Doctor Who. I don't know, but I can overcome that. I mean, remember in Doctor Who, like they had like one wall that was like a blown up photograph of a wall. It wasn't even a real wall. And then when they went back, like it's suddenly a real wall. I'm like, well, okay, I accept that. I don't want the blown up photograph again. I want to move forward. So I'm okay with this. The technology, I guess you want to call it. I don't know what you can call it. The technology sliding scale. I don't know.
I guess okay so. I don't know. I'm a little nervous about it because I also think that like just that period of Star Trek should be just kind of left alone and left to the books and like, to
I agree with you there.
Yeah, like I think that that's like a time in Star Trek that's like, we're done with that,
I agree with you there. I think we should be moving forward, not backwards. But having said that, I want to go back to the point that I'm trying to make here, which is that there was a lot that could have been done for the 50th. And you said, the people in charge of Star Trek. But here's my question to you. Who is in charge of Star Trek? Because, I mean, at one point it was the vision of Gene Roddenberry. After Gene Roddenberry, I think you can effectively say it was Harv Bennett, who was managing the series, and, certain people at Paramount. And then Rick Berman, obviously, through Next Generation, through Deep Space Nine, and even through Voyager. Who is, I mean, now obviously on Discovery, it's just Brian Fuller, but who is the guiding, who are the people guiding Star Trek right now? I don't think we have that. We don't have somebody like that, like a Rick Berman. We don't have a steward of the franchise who's looking out for the best intentions of the fans and the show or movie or what have you. I think you have competing interests. You don't even have the show under the same roof. You have the movies under Paramount, and then you have the television arm under CBS. And I think that causes friction as well. I mean, that wasn't the case when we were growing up. I mean, everything was in-house under one roof. Everything was in tandem. Therefore, you
That's
could
a really,
have,
yeah.
you could have unification on Next Generation, and that ties into the film in theaters. But now we can't even have that. Personally, again, I said it before. I think they should have rerun some of the old Star Trek films. I think that would have been great.
Oh, it would have been wonderful to have a complete marathon. Like it's a lot of movies. Maybe it could have been done over a
Hey,
couple of days,
it could
but
have been done over a couple of days. Thank
yeah,
you.
but it would have been great to have a marathon of some kind, like they did for. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that.
I wouldn't
And
have
that
been
would have been fine.
opposed.
No, that would have been fine, and I think that would have been a
Yeah.
great way to honor and introduce a lot of people to. I bet you there's a lot of fans of the Kelvin Star Trek who would have actually sprung for that just out of curiosity and gone to see the original films and then the Next Generation films just to see, like it's a great way to kind of learn about Star Trek in a without having seen the show, because there's a lot of people who love the J.J. Abrams reboot, if you will, but and I've spoken to a lot of people and they're like, well, I don't really like Star Trek, or I don't really know it, but I like the new movies,
Right.
so those people, it would have been a great way to kind of introduce them to the rest of Star Trek. Still some opportunities for that kind of thing, but yeah, it would have been a lot better if it tied into the release of Star Trek Beyond, I think. And again,
Absolutely.
when we talked about Star Trek Beyond, I think I pointed out that there were some sweet references in the movie, and I think that this movie succeeded where Star Trek Into Darkness failed, where they kept it just at the right level of homage versus rewrite, like of the
Yeah.
stories.
Another thing I think they should have done is they should have made, again, I point to Doctor Who. In many ways, Day of the Doctor is their Star Trek Beyond. It's the current incarnation of the show with the current actors, whomever they may be, and dealing with whatever current continuity. But there were efforts on the part of other people who control other parts of Doctor Who to do something for the older fans. Again, the audio products reunited the older Doctors. You had novels.
And that great special with the older Doctors where they were trying to get on the 50th anniversary.
You had that, which is comedic, right? I mean, why couldn't we have had again? It could have been through Fathom Events.
I think you nailed it when you asked that question. Who's leading the effort? Brian Fuller looks like he's stage 2. But he hasn't had his chance yet. The show's not out. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Once again, had the show started a year ago, that person would have been him.
Right.
I think Brian Fuller's probably the person who's going to end up being that person for Star Trek. So I do feel going into the next 50 years, we have a possibility to have a showrunner who's also like leading, and he comes from Star Trek, so he knows it, and he loves it.
He moderated the
50th
panel.
anniversary panel,
right, with Shatner, with I think it was Data and Worf. But again, I don't think a panel is enough. I mean, they should have had some kind of, I would have been perfectly happy with some kind of a special, even if it was just sort of, I don't know,
bunch of montages and clips and like
no, not even. I'm saying like bring back O'Brien.
Shatner.
No, I'm saying a legitimate special where you'd had O'Brien, let's say from Deep Space Nine, that doctor from Voyager, somehow Crusher. I'm going back to the Pasteur now. I don't know. You could have had something where you could have had a few people from each of the shows.
Oh,
And you
like an
could have written
adventure.
right. That's what I'm saying. That's
Oh,
what I'm
wow.
saying. And you didn't need. Okay, we're not getting Patrick Stewart. We're not getting William Shatner.
No,
We're
but
not getting any of the big ones. But
they
we
might
could
have
have
come
had.
back.
eh, but we could have had, we could have had Crusher in command of the Pasteur. There could have been something where,
Like an
let's say,
update.
O'Brien's on her ship, the holographic doctor is there, and they need to go. I don't know. They need to somehow find, somehow Uhura's in there. She's still alive miraculously. I don't know, but they could have done something, and
That's actually a really exciting premise, and I'm all. It's like, let's see what's going on now. Like, it would have been a neat thing. What if it was even like somehow just I again going back to Doctor Who. Thank you, Doctor Who, for doing such a wonderful job at your 50th. Peter Capaldi makes an appearance in the 50th anniversary. You even have like a reference to the future of Doctor Who, and it would have been neat if again, if Star Trek Discovery had been,
right.
had gotten going. How cool it would have been if like maybe a character got stuck in some kind of time warp or something, from
Right.
that, or we could have gotten an introduction to a character from Star Trek Discovery through this like kind of 50th anniversary special episode. Or I know,
for the 40th, I know that there was talk about a special IMAX movie, and at the time IMAX, it wasn't like this renaissance of IMAX that we have now, but IMAX was still sort of in its, people weren't really using it that much other than documentaries. So they were actually saying, well, if we keep it down to an hour, we could do it. So it would be like an hour special, and it would have been the Star Trek 40th anniversary special. And they were going to get people from Deep Space Nine, Voyager, which at that, I mean, let's face it, at that time, they were the furthest we'd gone with Star Trek. It was DS9 and Voyager.
You know what is funny also? Paramount kind of already had the material laid down a few years ago to do this 50th anniversary special, because we were kind of unfortunately left hanging after Star Trek Nemesis. Like there were a lot of like interesting kind of points that could have, been resolved. And how cool would it have been if the special actually started out with Captain Data?
I thought you were going to say Captain Riker.
Or Captain Riker, even either one of them. Yeah, but like, how like everyone was wondering like, what's gonna happen with I was gonna say BB-8 with
BB-8
with B4. We got a hint that Data's consciousness would reemerge somehow. How cool would it be? Like that's how we started off our 50th anniversary special. Was like, we see finally what was to become of Data. He's now the captain of the Enterprise. I think that's what the countdown wasn't he in Countdown, wasn't Data the captain of the Enterprise, if I'm not mistaken?
Data was in it, yeah. I don't know if he was in charge of the Enterprise. I'll look right now.
But regardless, it would have been a really neat way to tie it in and go back to the Next Generation, and then from there tied it into, as you said, maybe Nichelle. We've already had Scotty frozen in time. Maybe Nichelle Nichols could have
or Chekhov or Sulu.
Or Sulu. Yeah, any one of them. Well, Sulu's already been on Voyager. I think it's definitely I would have agreed with like putting Uhura in it and like having her kind of come back somehow. And she's wonderful. I think earlier there was another fan series on YouTube, which unfortunately I couldn't watch because the production value wasn't.
Are you talking about Gods and Monsters?
Is that what it's called?
The one with the captain from the Enterprise B? The guy
yes.
You couldn't watch that?
I couldn't watch it.
I watched it.
I was having a lot of trouble with the production
Oh,
value of
you're a
it.
sci-fi. You're a FX snob.
I maybe just a little bit. I don't know.
A little bit.
It was hard to watch, but
I
it
watched
but the
it.
reason I watched any of it was because of Nichelle Nichols, because she's still brilliant,
Right.
and actually Walter Koenig's in that too.
That's right.
He, and so again, once again, the fan stuff is way more celebratory and compelling than any of the stuff that's been put out kind of by the main sort of sources. And then you have CBS trying to sue the fans for doing a better job than them. And I think that's just really awful. It's like
Yeah, it is. It is really
kind of the
awful.
worst thing. It's like saying, it's like, whoa, have you, Star Trek has been infiltrated by the little creatures from season 1 of the Next Generation, and conspiracy.
By the way, you're right. Data is in command of the
I
Enterprise.
thought so. Yeah.
I just quickly checked.
There it is. How cool would it have been to even bring, as like a little cool side thing, to bring that to life, and
Right.
for like just anything that had the old, that's what I think that's what it boils down to, is we want to see the characters we love on screen again. It's good to have new characters. It's great. The film Beyond was a great film, but it just didn't give us, there's these people are
Right.
these people, the actors, the original, especially the original crew, and I think we touched on this point before on Starfleet Boy. They're gems.
They were, yeah.
They're like gold.
Yes, I
They're
know.
so precious, and like to let them just, I mean, it's awesome that they're going to conventions and doing panels again and things like that, but I want to see interviews, I want to see a documentary, or I want to see them reprise their roles. I don't care how old they are.
There we go. I think
You know?
most of us don't care, and I think,
Yeah.
again, I go back to Doctor Who. I think Doctor Who proves that fans don't care. I mean, those
Don't care.
audio adventures, and I personally think the audios are great. But I mean, you could do animation. Adam West and Burt Ward are reprising their roles as Batman and Robin in animation,
Wow.
and that's going to be in theaters, and for
These
2 nights.
actors, yeah, these actors invested so much into these roles that there's no reason to go elsewhere. And yes, I agree, like in terms of like, bang for your buck and pow pow, like the Kelvin crew works really well. I love them. But like, yeah, okay, so like that's cool. Like take some of the money you made from that and make a really kick-ass fan service type event.
Fan
Like,
service,
yeah,
right?
give us something really kick-ass with the original, the original crew that's left and wants to participate, of course,
And others. I mean, obviously, there's Next Generation. There's Deep
Yeah.
Space Nine. There's I mean, I honestly think Jonathan Frakes would be great to come back as Riker, along with Sirtis as Troy. I mean, there's a whole series of books about them running the Titan. And as you just said, Data is in command of the Enterprise, and that Countdown comic. There's plenty of characters from Deep Space Nine and Voyager. They could have come up with something. It would have been something nice for the fans. You could have shown it in theaters in a limited run. It wouldn't have cost that much, but it would have been a nice celebration of what Star Trek is, for the fans. Oh, and Enterprise. I always forget Enterprise.
Well, yeah.
But they could have had something with with people from there too, and it would have been great. And
Limited edition, a limited run series that each episode was set in a different show. So you had a revisit the Enterprise episode, you had a revisit Next Generation episode, you had a revisit DS9, Voyager, and and that would have been great too.
But something coordinated. I mean, it would have been great if somehow the plot of Star Trek Beyond would have informed the other thing, because just like in Star Trek 6, there was a slight connection with unification, where Spock mentions the Khitomer Accords and unification. Of course, you don't know what those are until you see Star Trek 6.
Right.
So
And
it would have been nice.
There was something else really touching
There
in
was something
Unification.
else.
I can't remember. We'll have to
Yes.
when we get there, but I remember
Yeah,
there was
we'll have to
something else
rewatch it.
very touching about and connecting to Star Trek 6 as well, if I recall
Right.
correctly.
Oh
Yeah, it
yeah.
was really nice.
So, and of course you had, so it would have been nice if somehow Star Trek Beyond could have had something more where it would have, touched on whatever, if you'd had a 50th anniversary special, let's say, and Star Trek Beyond had somehow, connected to it. And then again, like in Doctor Who, maybe there could have been novels that would have fleshed out the story more. That's another thing, the Star Trek novels. I mean, I read them from time to time. I really don't feel that there was, I could be wrong because I'm not 100% up to date with them, but I don't feel like there was a an effort to put out a 25th anniversary series of novels to celebrate that. I do know the comics did. The comics actually bridged. They actually connected the two crews, the original crew and the Kelvin Universe crew, which was interesting.
Interesting.
They did that, but really the comic, which is through IDW, they were the only ones that I feel made any effort to reach out to do something for the 50th. So I
So
mean,
so we're in September now, and if you do a quick Google search for Star Trek 50th, it'll lead you to an interesting USA Today Life article. And so here's what it says. Obviously, Star Trek Beyond is listed. Trek Talks, which is a think TED talks that are inspired by Star Trek, and I haven't seen any of
yeah,
those. I'll go check them out. Have you seen any of the Trek Talks?
no, but that's not what I want.
The Starfleet Academy experience. Fans enroll at Starfleet Academy in a program opening in May at the Canadian Aviation. I heard about that. I saw that on Instagram actually. Um, there's a 50th anniversary convention that happened in Las Vegas, and then
Yeah,
also one
New York.
one in New York. Yep.
Yeah, but we can't all afford to fly to LA and New York.
Right, exactly. And exactly. Again, like not having a special, that's what I'm sure there was a 25th anniversary uh convention as well.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure there was.
yeah.
But for those of us who couldn't afford to go, there was definitely other stuff to help us be a part of that celebration. And then um let's see what else. So there's this thing called Star Trek: The Ultimate Voyage. It's a 100 city concert tour, and that was going on earlier. I don't know if you remember that.
I didn't go
It's
up
like
to Miami.
I think it may have. Well, it was 100 cities. I know it did come to Seattle, but I found out about it too late, so I wasn't able to go to it. And then that's it. That's the only those are the only things listed. So there's definitely not a television special or a documentary there.
There's a book.
Um,
There's a book, like a factual book on the making of Star Trek, which came out a couple of weeks ago, and that's for the 50th. But it's not like a beautiful pictorial a coffee table book like some of the other ones that Star Trek has put out in the past. So again, I just feel like I mean I know there's stamps from the post office,
Well, there's
which is great.
the 50 artists that were selected to.
Yeah,
Yep, that was something that was going
there's
on.
that. But again, I just feel like it's kind of half-hearted. They could have done a lot more. I agree with you. The fact that there is no show on the air, I think, diminishes the ability to sort of rally the fans around something. But I think if Paramount and CBS I think they could have put more effort into doing something, and I'm not sure if because obviously Paramount and CBS are a little adversarial about their Star Trek, whatever respective Star Trek properties they have. I mean, for example, there's no novels of the Kelvin universe. Or there's no like the novels are clearly set in the classic run
Maybe the decision was because I know there's comics, Kelvin comics, and I think you told me you read some of them and they're really good.
Yes, they are really good. But still, I mean, it just seems like everybody's sort of like, like we're here and you're there, and we don't really reach
So
over to.
to do so to kind of I think it's pretty clear that both of us feel disappointed by what the official channels put out in terms
Mhm.
of the 50th anniversary. That's clear. That being said, it's not the end of the world for Star Trek, right? Like we both agree that there are exciting things on the horizon, especially Star Trek Discovery is an exciting thing. So I want to take the last part of this show because I'm sure we're gonna wrap up soon.
Yeah, I have to go to sleep.
But I just want to take a moment. I want to ask you in your memory of Star Trek so far, and I know you haven't been alive for Star Trek started 10 years before you were born, so you've been alive for most of it. Actually, less
Yeah,
than 10 years. What are you, 41, 42?
41. Yeah,
So, in your
moving
time,
closer to 42.
I know the meaning of life here. Uh,
Ah,
so moving closer. So, having been around for so long, Star Trek's been also a big part of your life. In fact, uh, in reflection of the last 40 years, what's your favorite thing? What the first question is? What's your favorite Star Trek moment of all time
oh my
ever?
God,
Yeah, it's a good question, right?
it's a tough one.
While you think about that, the second question is what stands out as the most impact Star Trek has made on your life personally? Like, what is something that Star Trek has done for you to embetter your life personally? So
Oh
those are
well, certainly, being able. I mean, Star Trek formed the basis for friendships with like you and other people I've known in my life, and obviously it's a connection I have with my father and my brother. So it acts as a connective tissue with other people who also enjoy it.
and put a lot of thought into it as we do.
And put a lot of thought into it, and even the people who don't put a lot of thought into it. I mean, I know people who just watch it for. For example, I know one guy who just watches it just for the Klingons, and but that allows me to have a connection with him that we know what Klingons are and we understand them, and it
Kapla.
adds Kapla. It adds a connection with people, and it has actually my whole life, at work, at school. So I think that I would have to say it's that. It's helped for. I mean, even Emma loves Spock. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't imagine going out with someone who doesn't love Star Trek as I do. I have in the past, and
It
it's
didn't.
more
You're
it's
saying
more
it's a little bit more difficult. Yeah.
it's a little more difficult when you go out with someone who doesn't like Star Trek. Yes, I've done that actually, and not easy for me. No, I don't. In terms of the best moment, favorite moment of Star Trek.
Through everything. Just
Oh, that's. I'd have to break it down by show, man. I don't know if I could do it, just the
all
whole
right.
thing.
Let's do it. Original series and movie and original series films. Can we bundle those together, or do they have to be separate as well?
No, I think I can do that easily. I think it's a tie. I have to admit, it's a tie between Star Trek Two, the Enterprise, first the Enterprise and the Royal Alliance, their first
Their first
they're seeing each other for
engagement.
the first time, and the James Horner music, and you're like,
Yeah.
what's going on? And the that right up until the moment where Kirk, looks down his glasses, here it comes. Um, phenomenal. You cannot. I just cannot look away.
So
Cannot look
compelling. It's so
away.
true. So true.
So compelling. And then we just talked about it in Star Trek 3, the stealing of the
Stealing of
Enterprise.
the Enterprise. Wow. So original
It's,
series, those are your two highlights from the original
yes,
series.
yes.
Okay, cool. Next Generation.
Next Generation. Next Generation. That's a tough one. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's the cliffhanger for Best of Both Worlds.
Ah, so good. It's so true.
I don't think I've ever experienced a cliffhanger like that in my entire life.
That was a long summer.
That was the longest summer any of us experienced. It was forever.
That was a really, you're right. That was a
Everybody
great
was on pins and needles. It just felt like, what the fuck is going on here? What's going to happen when it comes back? It was amazing. That's that whole episode, the whole first episode of Best of Both Worlds.
And it was so good. Just Riker saying fire, and they ended it like
and they ended it right there.
They ended it right there. And then, you know, one of the things my sister loves about Star Trek Generations is when Riker says fire.
Oh, really? That's great.
I remember one time I was watching with her. She's like, "Can you just rewind that?" I was like, "Sure. Here you go."
I can hear her saying that. That's so funny.
Watching Riker say fire, he's pretty good at saying. He's pretty good. He's fire. You know.
Yes, he is.
Deep Space Nine.
Ooh. Deep Space Nine.
It's been a while. You need to rewatch that show. I know.
Well, Deep Space Nine, I think it would be wow, that's a tough one. These are all tough.
No, you did pretty good, I think, for the TOS and TNG.
There's a scene, there's a scene with the there's a scene that with Cisco, I believe it's Cisco, and the Pa Wraiths in a cave, which is sort of it's kind of like this culmination of the great thing about Deep Space Nine is it wasn't afraid to involve spirituality and almost supernatural quality and all this stuff. And
well, it had a really good argument. You had a very compelling argument that it wasn't supernatural, and then you had a very good compelling. The show kind of skirted that line.
Absolutely right.
You know, like the Federation members of the crew, as Keiko O'Brien in the final episode of season 1, she's like, to us, the wormhole, it has aliens inside. There's a wormhole. We call them the wormhole aliens. And Vedic Wynn is like, my dear, those are the prophets. You know,
Vedic Wynn. Oh my God. Vedic, what can I say about Vedic Wynn?
Unreal. She's so good.
Everyone just loves to hate her.
I know.
I know there was somebody at work who said, "Oh, I can't stand that show because I hate her so much." I was like, "But that's the point. You have to hate her.
You have, Vedic, love to hate Vedic Wynn.
That tone of voice that she takes,
my dear,
condescending, my dear."
Yeah, it's like,
oh God.
But the prophets tell us, she's scary. She's really fucking scary. All right, so that Pirates cave scene, I don't remember, so I'm gonna have to.
Maybe I'm misremembering something, but I will say another moment that actually has always resonated with me is Cisco's first interaction with the
prophets,
in which they're trying to understand linear time. And the prophets are saying, but you are here. and Cisco can't understand what they're trying to say, and the wormhole aliens are trying to say, but
You're not in the present.
you're not in the present, you're still here.
Yeah.
And when I saw that happening on the screen, I realized that it was a much more complex show than Star Trek had ever done before.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's
and
such a
and
and the
that's just in the
message.
pilot.
Yeah.
When
And the
I realized this is
message.
the freaking pilot, I was like, oh, we're in for a doozy with this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would have to say, actually, that's one of my favorite scenes of Deep Space Nine is Cisco's interactions. And if I can add one more, when he meets Picard, we've met before in battle.
I know. It was so
Wolf 359, and Picard's just like, oh. Oh. I love that.
Yeah, it's a really good.
It is
Really good scene. I know we're not going to talk about Voyager. Unless you can remember a favorite scene from Voyager, I'm happy to hear about what it is.
You know what?
So troubling. Poor Voyager. Well, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Oh man, it's gonna be rough when we get to Voyager. You're probably gonna opt out of the show discussions. It's gonna be interesting. I hope you change your mind and give it a chance. I love that the kids.
I did give it a chance. I watched in the original run. It sucked.
Oh yeah, you saw the whole thing, didn't you? And you can't remember.
Pretty much.
Oh wow,
it sucked.
Okay. I have huge gaps in my watching, and I'll answer. I was going to answer all these in sequence, but I'll just go ahead and tell you. The only thing I can remember.
You didn't ask me about Enterprise.
No, I'm about to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm about to. Don't worry. I'm about
you forgot about Enterprise.
No, not at all. But for Voyager, I think what I remember was I loved how, and this is kind of like, not really, I guess. To me, Voyager, what I remember standing out about it that felt like cool was all the interaction between Kim and Paris, like especially like the.
Really?
Yeah, I like those characters. They're like a buddy film. It's kind of cool, but I have to rewatch the series because I didn't pay very close attention to it the first time around. I wasn't very interested, so I'm gonna have to give Voyager another chance, and then we'll go back to that question for me. But now, Enterprise. What about your favorite moment from Enterprise?
That one I really don't know because I haven't rewatched that show enough. I watched it in its original run, and then I watched the first. I think I have the first season and the third season.
Yeah. I think their Mirror Universe episode was something that I remember liking.
Well, I certainly loved that whole season where they were fighting is it the Zindi that they attacked the Earth?
Right. That was pretty cool.
I think I liked that storyline, and then I certainly liked the one with the Borg. I thought that was an interesting way of.
Oh, the Arctic Borg thing, right?
Yeah, because it reminded me of The Thing, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. So Enterprise had some real good ones, but I can't like recall dialogue or specific. I mean, I know what I hated. I hated the ending. The ending was terrible. The last episode. I can't. I don't know.
And now I have to ask about the
animated series.
Oh, the anime. Yeah, actually, I don't have enough memory about the animated series, but I was going to ask you about the Kelvin.
Oh, the Kelvin
Star Trek. Yeah, what's your favorite thing been about Kelvin Star Trek so far, or the moment?
Old Spock.
Oh yeah, Spock. Yeah, I have to agree with you on that one. For me, from the original series, I think and the films, moments that really stand out for me. Similar to you, obviously in Star Trek 2, but for me it's the whole battle in the Mutara. Everything from telling his story about the Kobayashi Maru to the ending, just all the way, from that scene on.
It is one.
It's just like, it's epic. It's like, I don't like to lose. And you see it, and and like, he's just, it's brilliant. I thought that was really compelling. Stealing the Enterprise, obviously is also one of mine. I have to say that I really like the ending of Star Trek 4. It stood out to me as a kid because I thought they were going to get court-martialed. I was really worried, and like they end up demoting Captain Kirk, and it's just like a really, I don't know. I remember. Are you stepping away? What's happening?
No, I was adjusting.
Okay. To me, that's like another scene that really, another moment that stands out. I love the sign-off in Star Trek 6. Oh, sorry. I have to say, I know I'm putting way more moments in here than you did, and I'm sorry if you felt limited, but the campfire scene in Star Trek 5 is lovely.
It is.
Row, row, row your boat. And then also the sign off, basically that moment, they've finished, they're back aboard the ship, and it's just kind of like this quiet moment on the bridge, and Uhura gets the call from Starfleet headquarters, and she's like, they're asking us to return to Starbase to be decommissioned, and it's like, this is like really happening. And then Spock says, if I were human, I believe my response, which I'm not, I believe my response would be go to hell. And then just like the way everyone, that they give everyone a moment, like a real, like
a reaction shot,
a reaction, like every single one of them get like a moment in that. And it's this beautiful, music that comes in, and and then the sign off. And I thought, like, that's beautiful with their signatures. And it's really sad that was the last time they were on screen, but to your point, it was just such a great send off for the whole crew one last time. It's like you can't really top that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
For Next Generation, I think for me, I have to say that for there's so many moments. The Best of Both Worlds cliffhanger is one that stands out. The Resican flute episode, to me,
really,
the Inner Light. I love the Inner Light. To me, it's just and that song, I find myself humming it all the time. Lol, Data's Child, that was like a really poignant moment for me. And then, of course, in All Good Things, when Captain Picard finally sits down with the crew, and if there were no movies, I think that was just such a nice way to end the show. Like, I thought it was just so perfect and in character. Like, it took 7 years for Captain Picard to just be like, you know what, I'm gonna spend the rest of my life with you guys, on this ship. No more, I'm not going to be an admiral. Like, Captain Picard came to the same decision as Captain Kirk, but in a different way. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And I really love that. He's like, it's just kind of him saying, that's it. This is where I belong. Love Captain Kirk and the whole Nexus stuff with Kirk.
The cooking captains.
The cooking captains, that was really great. First Contact, there's too many moments to count in that movie, but just seeing the crew kind of trying to get that from Cochrane, who they idolized as a hero, to be a hero. It's like, I thought that was a really cool moment.
That's going to be a good discussion, First Contact.
Yeah, when we get to that. I love the actual First Contact too. That scene was pretty cool, and Lily and all those things. And then I think for me, Insurrection has a few cool moments, but mostly,
What's that?
and and then Nemesis. I just love the Enterprise that he's just takes the Enterprise and like rams it into the. I was gonna call it the Narada, but I forget what the name
What
of
is that thing called?
Shinzon's ship. It was the Scorpion or something. I don't remember.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. But then I would say for Deep Space Nine, I really agree with you so much that like that pilot just has so many priceless moments. Everything from the Wolf 359 battle all the way to the time with the prophets and that kind of mind blowing revelation that we are nonlinear beings. There's not much difference between us and the non-corporeal prophets. I'm rewatching the show, and I feel like as I'm rewatching the show and doing the discussions with Scott, I'm seeing that I forgot a lot of things. So I'm really delighted to see what's ahead. But some things that stand out are when Worf comes back to the show. I think I really loved. I remember loving that. And then there's that episode with Jadzia and the classic Klingons, remember?
You know, I was so close to saying that was one of my favorites, but I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, it was such a good episode too.
100%.
And
I
just
love
this
that.
Sisko's endpoint is also wonderful. The way his story ends, I thought that was a great, ending to the.
Have you watched that yet?
I haven't rewatched that, but I remember it's still strong in my mind that
okay. Wow.
What happens, from the first time. With Star Trek Voyager, I can only say that I really was delighted by when Barclay to me the highlight of the well, I'll find out now as I rewatch it, but with Barclay, that was kind of like a moment that I really loved. In Enterprise, I really do have to rewatch that third season. But from what I remember, the Xindi attack on Earth was pretty compelling. That was something interesting, and I thought, I thought that also things like just Archer in general, like his character, I was really compelled by him, and I feel like that was a sad thing to not see his character kind of fully, realize, even though they kind of. It's interesting and awesome that Archer is kind of, still a presence in the Kelvin.
The Kelvin, yeah.
Timeline. That's so true. I like that. And I think that what's left is the Kelvin timeline. I have to agree 100% is original Spock is just the best thing about it. And I just love that I love that somehow the show, while it's like, super high budget and extremely, the Enterprise looks nothing like the original series Enterprise, but it feels like the original series. I don't know if it's just because the uniforms or what, and the sound effects and the sound design, it must be just a bunch of things, but like, I really just like the feel of it. It's a great lark, if you will. I feel a lot more comfortable with the Kelvin universe since it's been defined as the Kelvin universe. You know what I mean? Like, it's nice to be able to kind of separate it. We've talked about this before, as you know, I guess I'm a snob or a purist or whatever. And so there's a lot of things about the Kelvin timeline that are fundamentally disturbing to me. But
fundamentally disturbing is a good way of putting it.
But I still like the way it's handled, and I think it's a great lark or side thing, like a Star Trek in the meantime until we move forward. One day, hopefully we will move forward. That is my wish for the next 50 years, is like, I hope that we get over this like trip to nostalgia, and we start doing something new with Star Trek, something we haven't seen before, and go once again and carry out the mission of Star Trek, which is to explore strange new worlds and to seek out new life and new civilizations. And I think that the only way to do that is to move forward. So that's my little soapbox speech about that.
I echo that completely, and I find it very disheartening that the last 3 attempts at Star Trek have been efforts in nostalgia. It was Enterprise, which was a great show, don't get me wrong, but I still say go forward, not backwards. The Kelvin universe, which is a reboot, meaning it's backwards.
TOS, right?
And now Discovery, once again, from everything that it seems to, we're working in past history. We're not moving forward, and I just don't understand it. I it's shocking to me that Gene Roddenberry had the it was his thing. He could very easily have done anything. And what did he do? He threw it forward 80 years into the future and said, screw what we already know. Let's start from scratch. And that man once again just set Star Trek on the right path. And nobody else has had I mean, obviously, when you're doing spinoffs, you got to do it from what came before. But I don't know. I don't understand the whole. I don't know. I don't understand why we keep going back.
Yeah, I feel the same. I think it's fun for like a short while, but I think that Star Trek is really about moving forward, and there's such a great opportunity. There's so many like we've talked about this several times. So that's my wish for Star Trek. I want to say that I'm, on a personal note, that I'm, so grateful. My father, talks to me about Star Trek still today. And, I'm grateful that my father introduced our family to Star Trek many, many years ago. And I just want to say a special thank you to my father. So here's to you, Dad.
Cheers. All
Cheers
right.
to you. He's sitting in Florida. Actually, right now he's probably asleep, but normally he'd be sitting in Florida, enjoying the sun, watching the sunsets. He loves to do that. So
He's a good man.
He's a good man. And do you have any last words to say before we sign off on our 50th anniversary special?
I would like to ask you, what would you like to see for the next milestone? Would be what's the next milestone we'll be alive for? Are we going to be alive for the 75th?
I think so. It's 25 years from now, so I feel confident that if we stay healthy and active and keep our minds alive,
What do you want to see for the 75th?
Gosh, it's so hard to tell. To think about 25 years from now. I tend to think in 5-year chunks.
Let's do a Roddenberry. Go forward. What do you want to see?
I want to see, by the time the 75th anniversary rolls around, I definitely want to see humanity at a point where, and I
How
think
about Star Trek?
I know, but like a lot of things have to happen, I think, for Star Trek to move forward. I think I want to see a Star Trek that's not dealing with the problems that we have today with hunger, poverty, war, violence, and I want to see a world that reflects what Star Trek has been trying to teach, so that the next iteration of Star Trek, whatever's around in 25 years, is dealing with issues and problems that I can't even fathom right now, because to me, it feels like the issues that Star Trek has been dealing with are from 50 years ago to today are problems that we still have. Now we've made like huge strides. But if I think that like Star Trek is not inaccurate in that our potential is much greater than what our actual, as humans, what our actual output has been. And I feel like we can accelerate, we can do it. I think that like there are solutions to problems like energy and food and shelter for everyone's, homes for people. And, I think that these are things that like once we get rid of those things, like, or it's not a good word, but just once those problems are solved, then we as humanity can say, oh, we're living up to our promise. And so 25 years from now, I would like to see a Star Trek series or, film series that's celebrating new challenges. Like we might actually be in space 25 years from now. There might be, like a colony on Mars may be established. So who knows what Star Trek will talk about in 25 years. I don't think I answered your question. But for 75, which is the diamond anniversary, I expect whoever the powers that be to do a much better job at celebrating this wonderful institution known as Star Trek. That I can tell you.
I concur. I concur. um, yeah, I guess that's it.
All right. Well, thank you. This was our Star Trek 50th anniversary. Turned into that. Started out as just a discussion about what's going on with the 50th anniversary, and I'm so honored to have had this discussion with you. And thank you again for joining me on Starfleet Boy and indulging this fans fantasies.
Yeah.
Live long
and prosper.
And prosper, my friend.
To the next 50 years.
To the next 50 years.